The tensions between Venezuela and the U.S. started with minor conflicts, from tariffs to accusations, but it seems to be reaching new heights. Now, U.S.-Venezuela relations are escalating further, and tensions between the two countries have spilled over as Venezuela attacks the F-35 over the Caribbean Sea. On the morning of October 28, 2025, the Caribbean Sea seemed like another quiet day until a single radar pulse shattered the illusion. It started as a routine U.S. patrol, but spiraled into a 38-minute confrontation that would shock the world, rewrite regional power dynamics, and leave military analysts dissecting every strategy. This is how a Venezuelan interception escalated into a destructive aerial engagement. It all began at 9:10 a.m. when an American F-35 Lightning II, call sign Viper 1, sliced through the airspace near Venezuela's northern maritime boundary. This was a $92 million flying command center, with systems sweeping hundreds of miles of airspace, tracking vessels, and transmitting streams of encrypted data to the Pentagon. Behind it, the guided missile destroyer USS Valor stood watch, with its 96 vertical missile cells loaded, primed, and ready. When coastal radar operators in La Guaira spotted the fast-moving silhouette, alarms rang through Venezuelan command centers like shockwaves. President Nicolas Maduro studied the grainy radar from the Miraflores Palace and was once again insulted by America's actions. This wasn't just a routine patrol, but it was provocation and intrusion. He wasn't about to let it pass unanswered. By 9:42 a.m., two Su-30 Mk-2V flanker fighters roared to life at Fuerza Aérea Bolivariana Air Base. Their engines screamed against the concrete as they raced down the runway, hauling thousands of pounds of missiles into the sky. Venezuela called their mission Operation Bolivar's Wing, a symbolic gesture of sovereignty. The pilots, known by their call signs Red Falcon and Iron Hawk, climbed toward the jet they believed was violating their skies. Meanwhile, high above the Caribbean, Viper 1's pilot noticed two faint contacts closing in at alarming speed. He remained calm but not indifferent, as F-35 pilots train for moments like these. They got two taps on the emergency transmitter and sent an urgent message to USS Valor. Two inbound hostiles, requesting verification and support. Within seconds, the destroyer's Combat Information Center went from quiet hum to full battle readiness. At 10:15 a.m., the Venezuelan fighters descended from 22,000 feet, with their afterburners blazing like twin comets. The Red Falcon secured a radar lock. The command was spoken in quick-clipped Spanish, and in a minute later, two R-27R missiles streaked into the sky with white-hot warheads, tearing through the air at Mach 4.5. Viper 1 reacted instantly. The F-35 dove hard, blasting chaff and flares in desperate countermeasures. The first missile missed by just 90 feet. The second found its mark. The explosion ripped through the right wing root, destroying millions of dollars in composite panels in milliseconds. Warning tones screamed through the cockpit. The hydraulic pressure plunged, and engine temperatures surged dangerously. Soon after, the pilot issued a single message that said, "Mayday, preparing for the ditch." As the aircraft lost altitude, its fuel line ruptured, leaving only white vapor behind. Minutes later, Venezuelan radar operators watched the F-35 signature flicker, stutter, and disappear. Their control room erupted in celebration. To them, they had just struck a blow against the world's most advanced fighter aircraft. The distress signal from Viper 1 reached USS Valor at 10:20 a.m. Rear Admiral Marcus Hale stared at the tactical display, with two hostile Su-30s turning back toward home. His response was cold and sharp. Basically, Venezuela had fired first, but the U.S. was going to finish it. Operation Iron Reply was launched. Within moments, the destroyer's missile cells opened with a hiss. 5 RIM-174 Standard Missile 6 interceptors roared upward, with their guidance systems painting arcs across the sky at Mach 3.5. From the cockpits of the returning Venezuelan jets, they started getting radar warning alarms in a frantic electronic scream. The sky became a hunting ground. The Red Falcon tried to break left, and Iron Hawk tried climbing, but there were too many missiles coming too fast with precise guidance. The first SM-6 detonated behind the Red Falcon, shredding tail fins. The second obliterated the fuselage entirely. Iron Hawk managed a desperate counterfire, launching an R-73 missile blind. But U.S. jamming systems reduced its guidance to chaos. Two more SM-6s tore through the sky, and in seconds, Iron Hawk was gone, and only debris was left. The destruction didn't end there. Red Admiral Hale's next order was simple yet chilling, asking the F-35 to strike the nest. At 10:35 a.m., two F-A-18E Super Hornets from USS George Washington screamed over Fuerza Aérea Bolivariana Air Base. 5 precision munitions rained down, including AGM-88 HARMs and AGM-154 JSOWs. The explosions consumed hangars, fuel depots, and the runway in a chain of destruction so intense that U.S. satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above registered the heat signature. 185 Venezuelan personnel had vanished by the time the smoke cleared. The airbase lay in ruins, and radar across Caracas went silent. All of these took just 38 minutes. At 11:56 a.m., a Navy Seahawk retrieved Viper 1's pilot from a life raft, alive, battered, but carrying the jet's black box, containing every radar frequency Venezuela had used during the engagement. However, the F-35 was now submerged in the sea. Across the world, news outlets lit up with headlines. Yet, in the Caribbean dusk, as the USS Valor cut through calm waters once more, the two countries realized that Venezuela had paid it in full. The exchange was a lesson that showed how bad the conflict was between Venezuela and the U.S. In fact, tensions between the United States and Venezuela have sharply escalated recently, especially with major military buildup, renewed economic sanctions, and aggressive anti-drug policies. At the center of this standoff is a dramatic increase in U.S. military presence in the Caribbean, which Caracas insists is a direct threat to its sovereignty, while Washington frames it as a campaign to curb narcotics trafficking. The dispute is now touching on political legitimacy, financial isolation, and the troubling role of criminal networks within Venezuela. In a striking show of force, the United States has deployed the nuclear-powered USS Gerald R. Ford, its most modern aircraft carrier, to the waters of the Caribbean. U.S. officials describe the deployment as a part of a broader effort to disrupt illicit actors and counter transnational criminal organizations. The carrier strike group reinforces a robust naval presence that includes destroyers, submarines, and F-35 aircraft. The Trump administration is defending the buildup as a vital component of its anti-drug strategy. Officials claim that U.S. forces have conducted strikes on suspected drug trafficking vessels operating in Latin American waters, resulting in dozens of casualties. These operations target criminal groups exploiting the Caribbean as a corridor to move narcotics northward. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has responded with sharp rhetoric and military posturing. He has denounced the U.S. deployment as an extravagant, immoral, and criminal threat, insisting that Washington is using the pretext of counter-narcotics work to press for regime change. Maduro has declared a state of maximum readiness, mobilizing hundreds of thousands of troops, air defense units, riverine forces, and civilian militias along Venezuela's northern coast. Beyond the military escalation, economic pressure between the two countries has also mounted. In March 2025, President Trump issued an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on goods imported into the United States from any country that purchases oil or gas from Venezuela. The order clearly aims to sever financial lifelines to the Maduro government, framing its action as a national security measure that also targets destabilizing criminal activity. At the same time, Chevron's special operating license in Venezuela was only extended until May 27, 2025. The administration had previously mandated a phased wind-down for the company's Venezuelan operations, citing dissatisfaction with Maduro's leadership and governance. It's clear that the U.S. is squeezing out Venezuela's oil sector, which is a core pillar of its economy. On the law enforcement front, the U.S. has escalated its confrontation with organized crime tied to Venezuelan power structures. In February 2025, the U.S. State Department officially announced that the Tren de Aragua gang, which originated in Venezuela, was a foreign terrorist organization. Treasury sanctions later reinforced the designation, targeting the gang's leadership, including its head, Hector Nino Guerrero Flores, and other key figures. Making the pressure even worse, in July 2025, the U.S. Treasury also sanctioned the Cartel de los Soles, a Venezuelan network that's apparently linked to Maduro and senior members of his government. The Cartel de los Soles has been accused of facilitating drug trafficking and providing structural support to Tren de Aragua and other criminal organizations. These moves come amid a backdrop of political crisis. The July 2024 presidential election in Venezuela remains highly contested. Maduro declared victory, but opposition forces argue that Edmundo González Urrutia actually won. After an arrest warrant was issued against him, González fled to Spain, where he was granted asylum. In exile, he has continued to call for dialogue and democratic reforms. Meanwhile, Venezuelan authorities placed a bounty of $100,000 on him, and the charges he faces remain a point of deep contention. Despite the escalation, channels of communication have not completely broken down. Maduro has publicly said that he is willing to engage in direct talks with the U.S. administration, though he insists that any dialogue must respect Venezuela's sovereignty. But for now, diplomatic recognition remains severed. The United States continues to recognize the opposition as Venezuela's legitimate political actors, and its embassy in Caracas remains closed. Regionally, the geopolitical ramifications of Venezuela's conflict with the U.S. are also evident. Venezuela has threatened retaliation against neighboring Trinidad and Tobago after the U.S. used its territory for military operations. Caracas has suspended energy cooperation with Port of Spain, including on critical gas field projects, framing the suspension as a response to Washington's aggression plan. The move has spread unease across the region and sparked debate over the destabilizing effects of the U.S. in the area. There are also some humanitarian and political consequences. Venezuela continues to produce one of the world's largest refugee flows, placing massive strain on neighboring countries. The crisis between the U.S. and Venezuela has caused many Venezuelans to flee, seeking stability elsewhere. Meanwhile, diplomatic isolation and economic blockade risk deepening the suffering of ordinary citizens. One thing is certain: the moment when Venezuela attacked an F-35 marks one of the most intense chapters in U.S.-Venezuela relations. The question now is, will this escalate further, or will these countries finally stop here? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on global military events.